that we have the reverb routed, I wanted to show you what decay time sounds like, right? And recall that in the presentation I talked about how decay time gives you sizes of the room, or it gives you clues to how big the room is, and it also gives you clues into the material of the room as well. So if I go to my deverb here, right, and I go, right now it's set to 4.5, but let's go to like something crazy like, 13 or like 10 seconds or something like that. That means the initial sound is going to be heard, and then it's going to last for about 10 seconds. That reverb time is going to last about 10 seconds. So let's hear how this sounds here.
As I started to follow their instructions, I knew I'd be the only one taking the blame because my friend was already disappearing far off into the distance. Lovely.
So you got that big giant wash, and for it to go down by 60 dBs from where it was in the loudest part is, that's your decay time. That's your 10-second decay time. So if the longer the decay time, the bigger the room sounds, the more echoey, I shouldn't say echo, but the more reflective the room sounds, right? So let's go to a longer one.
As I started to follow their instructions,
Right, so this is about a 20-second decay time. So you see this used in a lot of film commercials or like, trailers where the transitioning from one scene to the next, especially in like horror films, is pretty popular. And we'll take a look at some trailers in class when we talk about reverb, so you all can actually deconstruct how reverb is being used. But that's the idea of a decay time, right? If it's lower.
As I started to follow their instructions, I knew I'd be the only one taking the blame.
Right, so that's a 1.8 second. That sounds a lot more natural. It's not such a big, crazy room.
As I started to follow their instructions, I knew I'd be the only one taking the blame.
So this sounds a lot more natural than the other ones, right? So the room just got a lot smaller and maybe a little bit more absorbent as well. So that's what that is. Now, there's a couple of things you could do here. Let's say I'm going to exaggerate this, right? And let's see how this sounds again.
Because my friend was already disappearing far off into the distance. Lovely.
So now that you know about EQs, you can EQ the reverb, and which is one of the greatest things about creating a reverb send and return like this, right? So I could put an EQ over here, and now I can make this room even more absorbent, right? And to make it more absorbent, I can take away some of the high frequencies. So let's try this out here.
Because my friend was already disappearing far off into the distance. Lovely. I guess I thought it'd be nice to have someone alongside of me for this shitty experience I was about to have. Full of shame, regret, and embarrassment, I felt the questions and the guilt trip.
So, taking away some of the bright frequencies, I'm going to make this a little bit more drastic, actually. Let's use a low-pass filter.
Because my friend was already disappearing far off into the distance.
See, now the material of a room has changed, right? Now it sounds like you're more in a cave than some kind of an auditorium or something like that by taking away some of the high frequencies. So let's do it before and after.
As I started to follow their instructions, I knew I'd be the only one taking the blame because my friend was already disappearing far off into the distance. Lovely. I guess I thought it'd be nice to have someone alongside of me for this shitty experience.
So you can further craft and design the materials in your room by using an EQ following your reverb on the reverb return track that you created over here. And the more absorbent, the less high frequencies there are. The less absorbent, the more high frequencies there are. Bobby Osinski, which is the person that wrote the Mixing Engineer's Handbook, which is some of the readings that we had in this semester, he talks about this as well, and he says the brighter your frequency is on your reverb, the more that source would stick out. So if I made a brighter reverb for this vocal, the vocal's going to stick out more in the mix. Whereas if I took away the high frequencies like I did now, the vocal will blend in a little bit more in the mix. So something to keep in mind. And now you're starting to see how these tools are being used together. I hope this helps, and feel free to ask any questions if you have them. All right, take care.